Hey guys, it's Kat and I'm back today to conclude my 1 month, one palette for November. I'm running a little bit late with this one. It's already the end of the first week of December, so I will update you on what I'm doing for December. It's a little bit different this month. I decided last minute to change my mind, so if you want to see what I'm doing for December in this series, check out later on in the video. But let's jump to this month. So in the past month, all of November, I was using the Huda Desert Dusk palette. And what I do in this series is I choose a palette to use for a month, and the rule is I need to use every single shade in that palette by the end of the month, and I need to use the palette, say, 3 to 4 times a week. And that really gives me a good idea of how much do I really like this palette, what problems did I find with it, what things did I love about it, and I talk through each shade and sort of some of the looks that I created while using this palette. So that's what I'm doing today, and then I recreate the look, one of the looks that I really liked throughout the month at the end of the video. So the makeup I'm wearing now, the eye look, I will recreate at the end of the video. All right, let's jump into it. So the Huda Beauty Desert Dusk is a palette that I think I got about 2 years ago, and at the time I really liked. And I get why I liked it, but at the same time, I sort of struggled with it a little bit this month. I sort of liked it, struggled with it, and then liked it again. And that often is what happens when it comes to these videos. You might delve into it, use your favorite shades, maybe rediscover a shade that you, or discover a shade that you didn't previously like. And then you sort of hit a wall where you're like, I don't know what else to do with it. It's all sort of, I've got the shitty shades that I don't really like left, or I don't really want those looks. And then sometimes you find your inspiration again and you sort of rock the colors that you didn't previously want to use. And that's exactly what happened to me this month. So if you haven't seen this palette before, it looks like this. And hopefully you can see it's primarily a warm eyeshadow palette with some pops of purple. It's got some pops of duochrome. No, those ones are duochrome. And some nudes. So it's a pretty, there's this sort of true colors. I'm right near a window. It's a really hot day today, so it's the equivalent of, I think, about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So I have all the lights and everything off, and I'm just trying to like stay cool. So those are the colors. That's like the true colors of them, and you can see like there is a lot of warms. There's reds, there's oranges, even the browns are very warm. They're very reddy. That's a very reddy brown. That's a very orangey brown. You've got some sort of more neutral, lighter shades. Same here, and then you have pops of color and glitter and purple. So I really like this palette because at the time when I bought this, I was really into warm colors and I really liked the pops of duochrome. Whereas this month I struggled a little bit because I'm sort of out of the routine of wearing really like oranges and reds, and I've been wanting to get into more yellows and greens and stuff like that. So for me, originally, this was a bit of a struggle, but I found my feet again at the end and sort of got back inspired with it. All right, to start off with, I'm going to talk about the first 3 shades because they're all mattes. I just used this one to sort of set the crease of my primer. I do have to say that this shade, and you'll see me apply it at the end on camera, it looks very yellow. It's actually a very peachy, it's sort of a very peachy nude color. So on my skin tone, which is like NC20, I know that on camera I look very fair, but I'm actually more like light beige. So NC20, this shade is too dark to just put all over my lid and look like a nude shade. It definitely has a bit of color, as you can see. So when I put it in the crease, I can see it. So for me, I couldn't use this all over my lid or as a brow highlighter. I mainly just use this to set the sort of crease, to blend the mattes over the top. So I use this in a lot of looks, but because it wasn't true to my skin tone, I didn't actually use it as much as I use other sort of cream mattes, because this was more of a peachy, yeah, it's more of a light peachy color. When it came to musk, I really liked it. It was a nice matte. It's a nice cool tone transition color. And then Eden is like a true bright peach. Now I use these once again, sort of depending on the looks, I'll use them in the crease. So today I'm using the peachy one in the crease, but when I wanted to use more nude looks or cooler tone looks, I would use that one. So they are That one feels a bit gritty actually, but they did apply quite nicely. They had nice pigment and they did blend out well. So that's probably more true to color there. So I did quite like all of the formulas of these mattes, and on the screen you'll see a look where I used these three. So what I pretty much just did was put musk all over the lid. I blended it out with Eden and Desert Sand. And you can see like all matte looks, they don't suit me. It's not for me. I don't like it, but you can see that they do, like they build up and they sort of blend pretty nicely. Like I was quite happy with these shades. Okay, the way I'm going to break this down is I'm probably going to go nudes, then duochromes, purples, and sort of the warm colors. I feel like that sort of encapsulates the looks that I've been doing a little bit more. So let's move on to, this is actually a duochrome shade. So I'll talk about this in a sec, but let's talk about Nefertiti, Cashmere, and Angelic. So they are all shimmers and they all clearly have different sort of tones to them, or different colors to them, but they all are the same tone. So these aren't highlight shades, they're not very, very light, but they are that sort of wash of light shimmer on the lid. So I personally couldn't use any of these as a highlight shade in the inner corner or brow bone, because they were either my skin color or slightly darker, just with all different colors. So this one is more yellow gold, that one is more taupe and cool toned, and that one is more pink. And it's like a pink to gold sort of shift. So with Nefertiti, which is that gold one, so let's do a bit of a swatchy swatch here. I might turn this down a little bit so you can see it. Sorry, the lighting is just a mess today, but you can see that it's like a bronzy light champagne gold with a gold sparkle in it. Now for me, this is probably like a good nude. So you can see on the screen that I use this shade blended out with Eden, which is that peach shade, that matte shade that I showed before. It was just a shade that I literally wore to the beach. It wasn't exciting. This is just like a really, really nude color for me with a little bit of glitter. So it is very wearable, but it wasn't super exciting. When it came to Cashmere though, I loved this shade. So this is more like a rosy taupe, and it's got a bit of a, I don't know, like a, not a silvery on camera. It looks like a silvery shift, or shimmer, but it's more of just a nude. It's like a cool tone nude, and I loved this. I wore this a lot on its own. I thought it was a beautiful color, and it was the color that I really wanted to reach for the most. And it was one that I sort of, the quality of it's really nice. It doesn't have any glitter in it. It applies really, really smoothly. It's very, very, yeah, it's such a nice color, and I just use this all over the lid, blended it out with Musk, which is that sort of cooler tone transition color, and I just personally really loved it. So I actually didn't take too many photos with it, but I actually wore it a lot. It was probably my most used shade, but on the screen you can see me wearing it with a darker brown that we'll talk about soon. Then you can see here on the screen that I used it and made it a little bit rosier with some red shades, just used really, really softly. So we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the reds, but you can just see that it's just a really pretty versatile. It adds a bit of brightness to the eye, and it was the sort of tone or the color that I was looking for. This is the kind of color that I'm happy to reach for every day. And I thought this really complements my eyes more than Nefertiti, that gold, did. So I went back and used this one a lot. The shade Angelic is a really popular one. I hear a lot of people say that it's their favorite shade of this palette. It's a pink that shifts gold. So once again, I'm going to turn this down a little bit more. Hopefully you can see. So it's a pink that shifts gold. And once again, the formula is very similar to Cashmere. It's a nice formula. It applies really nicely. I used this once and I didn't like it. On my coloring, it just didn't really work. It sort of looked too pink. I put this on with a really nude look, and I just saw pink. It looked out of place. It didn't suit my coloring. So even though I really like the formula, the color personally wasn't for me. I'd much prefer to go those two shades over the pink. But I understand why people like it, because it is a nice performing shade. And if you like the color, fair, totally fair. All right, let's now talk about the duochrome shades. So we've got this one, that one, and this one. So I'm just going to swatch them really quickly. So there they are there, and duochromes are sort of hard to see on camera, and these are very, very subtle duochromes. Now, some of them can look really beautiful, other ones can look really bland, and it really depends on how you use them. So I'm wearing that middle one on my eyes today, and it does give a beautiful sort of color effect, but I do think that how you use these really do I don't know, change how you feel about them. So Celestial is like a gold sand color with a bit of a pink to gold shift. Now it is very, very subtle. You could very easily just use this on your eyes as like an all over color and it looked quite nude, but maybe a little bit more complex than normal. So hopefully you can see there that it's got like a sandy sort of nude base, but it's got a slight pink shift. It's very, very subtle. If you use this all over your lid, just as a nude look, it won't actually look like a duochrome. It will just look like a champagne sort of color. So it's not very, very intense and it's really hard to build up to make it look intense. When we've got Twilight, which is the one I'm wearing, this is more of a pinky purple to sort of like bluey color. So it's more of a pinky color base and then it's got a bluey purple shift. This one you can get more duochrome action out of. So that one is the most duochrome out of the bunch. And it's also, because it's got this pinky base, it works really well with the reds and oranges in this palette, which is what I've paired it with. I've paired it with orange and for some reason it just looks beautiful. You could do an orange look and then just dot it on and it almost looks like it's the whole thing might be duochrome. It works really well with this palette. Another one which is Retrograde, this is more of a browny red and it's got more of a greeny blue shift to it. So this one, once again, isn't as full on as the middle shade. I just think you really need a good glitter glue or to use it wet to actually get the proper effect because it looks a little bit lackluster compared to the middle shade, but it is a very pretty shade. Now I do find that the best way to make these work is by layering them over either a darker base or a complementary base. So for example, what I'm talking about is if you get like Amethyst, which is a purple, and you put it down, and you get Celestial and you sort of put it over the top, it actually sort of pops. It's hard to show, but it pops a little bit more than if you just had it on its own. So that all of a sudden looks a little bit more complex. And I found that once again, if you had more of an orange and you got the purple shade and you sort of put them with each other, once again, it just makes it look a little bit more special. You can see it a lot more there. So it goes orange, shift, whereas that one's still really subtle. Let's try a dark brown with Retrograde. So I'm talking about this one here, I'm putting it there. And if you just pat that on, it all of a sudden you can see the color shift a bit better. So I did find that these were more topper shades. On their own, they didn't really do too much. And a good example is on the screen, you'll see me using Retrograde on the eye. And this could be really any just sort of cool tone shimmer. It doesn't look duochrome. It doesn't look special. It just kind of looks a bit bland. Probably the best example of how to use it is the look that I'm doing today, which is inspired by the look I've got on the screen. This one I think is a little bit more subdued than what I'm currently wearing. I sort of ramped it up a little bit, but you can see the complementary orange to purple really, really did work well. So I find that the best way to use these is either as a topper or to make it a bit complementary with a different shade. Now, I also tried to use this with a glitter glue. So what I have on the screen right now is me wearing all of the duochrome shades, just the duochrome shades, and they're over glitter glue. Now, you can see that even over glitter glue, they look kind of bland. So glitter glue really helps them stick to the skin and look quite vibrant. And even with that, I found that the only one that really popped and looked great was Twilight, which is that purple. The rest of the shades just looked, I don't know, like normal shimmers. They don't look really beautiful. They don't look really amazing. Definitely the best way to use these shades is either as a topper or to pair it with a complementary shade. All right, the next shades I want to talk about are the darker matte shades. I will talk about maybe these ones. So we've got Amber, which is like a reddy brown. We've got Oud, which is a darker chocolatey reddy brown. We've got Saffron, which is a dark red. And then we have Blazing, which is an orange. Now, I did find that all of these shades do work quite nicely. They can feel a little bit dry and gritty in the pan, but I found that they all had nice pigmentation. They all blended quite nicely and you could pack it on the eye really nicely. So you can see that all these shades are very, very warm. So I found that even if you were trying to create a neutral look, all of these would sort of turn it slightly warm, and you know, it is what it is. If you want a warm look, these were great. I did find that I didn't actually use this shade on its own built up. So I mainly only use that in the crease or to deepen a look or to make a look a little bit more red, like I did with that cashmere look. But I did find that the browns were really beautiful. They applied on the eye nicely. You could blend them out, you could pack them on, you could really build them up to make them quite bold matte looks. So if you did like matte brown looks, they applied really nicely. So did the orange, which I've got on my eye today, and you can see me demonstrate at the end. But I just thought these applied very nicely, but they all, not all of them look the same, but for example, if you used red or this one or that one or that one, the color tone is very similar. Like the depth of color is different, but they all sort of make a look warmer, if that makes sense. Where I think this palette is a little bit limited with that, because even if you wanted to create sort of a neutral look and you wanted to go a brown in the crease, they all lent really red. So that was limiting in my opinion, but they performed very well. Now, a look that I did create with this dark brown all over the lid was when I put that all over the lid and then put the glitter shade Cosmo. So this is the glitter shade Cosmo. This was actually surprisingly quite easy to use. I thought it was gonna be really difficult. It's a beautiful loose glitter. It's pressed glitter, but it's like, doesn't have a sticky base. It's I don't know, it's like a loose glitter pressed. It's weird. But this does need a sticky base to stick to. So what I did in the look that's on the screen is I used that dark chocolate brown all over the lid, which blended nicely, looked really nice. I was very impressed with the formula, which is the shade Oud. And then I put some glitter glue, just tapped it on the lid with my finger, like I've just done over this swatch here. And then with my finger, I used the glitter and I patted it on like that, and it was actually very, very easy to use. I quite liked this glitter. I think with the glitter glue, it looked beautiful. I really liked the look. I got a lot of compliments from it. And I would definitely use that combination again. I would definitely use that glitter again. My only issue with the glitter being in this palette is that I feel like it's a little bit more fragile than the rest of the palette, and I think it just makes the palette a little bit more messy if you use it often. So I would actually love to see a quad or a 9-pan palette of just these glitters, because surprisingly, when you use them, they are gorgeous and they are actually pretty easy to use with the glitter glue. Like that's gorgeous. I love that. I can just see it from the side, and you probably can't see it, but it just looks beautiful. It's like a complex yellow gold and red and pink, and yeah, it's really, really pretty. And I'll definitely use that again. I like that. I liked pairing it over to some of the neutral shades, and with the glitter glue, it was surprisingly easy to use, but it is a flaky shade. So it's a bit messy in this palette, but I still liked it. When it came to the warm shimmers, so I'm going to talk about Blood Moon, and I'm going to talk about Turkish Delight here. I found these to be way too similar. So on the screen, you can see a look where I used the more orangey one, which was Blood Moon. I used that all over the lid, and I also used that duochrome purple to sort of be the inner corner highlighter. It was a pretty look. I also used this with Saffron and Eden, so some of those matte shades, you know, it was a nice look. It was quite bright. I also used Turkish Delight really softly in that look with Cashmere to add some, you know, shimmer to that sort of more neutral look. But my biggest issue with these two shades were that on the eye, they look very, very similar. So if I swatch them down here, Blood Moon is more orange and Turkish Delight is more cranberry. But on the eye, you can barely distinguish the difference between them. So I just found that they were too similar in the palette. I would have just preferred to have had Blood Moon. I think it's a bit more of a flattering shade. I think it applied a little bit nicely, a bit more nicer than Turkish Delight, which was a little bit, you need to build it up a little bit more. It's got more of a nice sort of color reflect to it. But I just felt like in the palette, they were too similar. And I always reached for Blood Moon over Turkish Delight. So, you know, you'd probably see a slight difference if you use Turkish Delight paired with some reds, and you definitely see a difference if you use Blood Moon paired with oranges, but I feel like it's the mattes that would distinguish them, not so much the shimmer shade. And on the screen here, you can see a look that I did. I really loved this look, and I would have recreated this look because I love the neon liner, but I didn't like the outcome. So Now, hopefully you can see in this look that the inner third is Blood Moon, which is orange. And then on the middle part of the lid, it's Turkish Delight, which is slightly more cranberry. You can barely notice the difference. If you looked at this look, you'd go, okay, that's one color all over the lid. But if you look very, very closely, you'll see that it is actually two colors. And then I've got a purple shade in the outer corner, which I'll talk about in a second as well. They all just sort of blended into one shade. So for me, I really like this look, but it would be easier to recreate it with just one shade than using 3 shades because you can't tell the difference. So for me, these were too similar. And the shade that I actually put that on with was Royal, which is this one here. So I had that in the outer corner. So I had inner corner, middle, outer corner, and they all sort of just blended into one, which was a shame. All right, so last we're talking about the purples, and let's just talk about these two because we've spoken about the sort of duochrome shades that sort of are a bit cooler. Let's talk about the matte, and so we've got Royal, which is the shimmer, and Amethyst, which is the matte. Now, I think for the matte, these are beautiful colors, and I think in this palette they are great because you have a sea of warm, you have a sea of nude, then you have these duochromes that sort of need sometimes some of these purple shades to really like look organic with. I just think the pop of purple in the duochrome is what makes this palette a lot more different than every other warm palette out there. So that part there I think is key. However, using these, I didn't think they were special. So for example, we've got Royal here, which once again, it looks like a dark cranberry. And in that look, I'll put on the screen again, I had this in the outer third and you can't tell that it's there. So it does add some depth to a look, but I don't think it's dark enough or different enough to the cranberry to add too much depth. I'm actually going to show you the color combination that I went for in that look that I just couldn't successfully do. Yeah. Blood Moon feels a lot smoother. It's more buttery to pick up on the finger as well. So I think that's definitely a better one. So I blended these three together. Now, if you make them distinctly different, you will see a difference. But if you sort of start blending them, you end up going, oh, they're all pretty similar. So I went with that color combination. And if you sort of blend them together, it doesn't take much for them to just start looking like almost one shade. So you can see how like similar those two are, but that one is just like a deeper version of the cranberry. So in my opinion, you could just cut out that middle one, and at least you've got difference going on there. But I mainly use the Royal shades, that shimmery shade, to deepen parts of a look. So for example, this look, I tried to use it in the outer corner to deepen it. You can barely see it. But then I also used it with Twilight, so that duochrome, and also Amethyst. I used those three in a look to really see how purple these purples can get. And I can tell you they're not very purple. So I was a little bit disappointed. So what I did was I had that all over the lid. I had this in the crease, which you can see probably is one of the worst mattes. So it looks very purple in the pan, but it's a bit of a scratchy, really tough. You can see the texture of it, hopefully. I don't know if you can see the texture there, but it's got bumps in it because it's a little bit gritty. Like I've just built that up. It might blend out the colors nicely and it works well with the reds. But the only thing that really gives a purple look is actually the duochrome. The duochrome turns it more purple, but I found that that was probably the worst matte in the bunch. And the purple look that I've got on the screen, I really tried. I was actually taking photos of this look all day because I couldn't capture it looking purple. I really struggled. When I was wearing any colored clothes, it would just look like a cool toned eye look. It was only when I wore a black jumper that you kind of go, oh, I see that it's a little bit purple, but even then I feel like the liner, which was purple, made this look more purple than the actual eyeshadow itself. So even though I love the pops of purple in here, I don't think they've got enough guts to really look purple. And if you pair them with any of the other colors, which are quite bold, it really knocks back that purple and just makes it look a little bit more like a deeper red or a deeper, you know, warm tone. The only thing that really gives a purple effect is the Twilight duochrome shade that you can pop over the top and you go, okay, I can see the purple there. So for me, those purples, even though I did reach for them pretty often, I didn't actually think that they added much purple to a look. They just sort of added a little bit more coolness, 2 reddy looks, 2 orangey looks, 2 brown looks, but it wasn't anything dramatic. I think even though they look some of the coolest, and I think they make this palette the most unique, they definitely don't hold up very well on their own. All right, so I think I've spoken about every single shade here. So overall, I think my favorite shades that I've come across in this palette, surprisingly, I think Cashmere was my favorite. I previously thought this looked like the most boring shade in the world and I just ignored it, but it was the shade that I wanted to reach for the most. It was the easiest one if I'm just having like a low makeup day to chuck all over the lid with a bit of mascara, do my brows, off I go. It was a beautiful, really, really beautiful shade, easy to use, beautiful effect. I also was really surprised with Cosmo. If you want a glittery look and you have glitter glue, this is beautiful. I really like it. I think the effect was really, really pretty, and I would reach for this palette more just to use this shade when I want to go for like a glittery pop somewhere. The other shades that I quite liked, I think the mattes, like the top row of mattes, impressed me quite a bit, as well as the orange down here. They were really easy to use, and they were quite nicely pigmented. And I also liked Twilight. That was probably the only duochrome that I had a really good effect with. If you wanted to use retrograde and make it look more bold, you could definitely use it wet. I personally don't like using eyeshadows wet, so I just don't tend to do it. But for me, that one wasn't as interesting as I remember it to be. And that could be because this palette I've had for 2 years, and in that time I found better, like more intense duochromes, possibly, and I'm just getting picky. But it just was a little bit lackluster. It did add dimension to looks, but I didn't love it as much as I liked Twilight. So yeah, I think those were the shades that I liked the most. The shades that I liked the least was definitely Angelic, only because the color doesn't suit me. It just looked really alien on me. I also didn't really like these two. I found them to be really boring, and for a duochrome that's supposed to be like yellow to pink, I was like, where is it? It's so dull. So for me, I didn't like that. And then I also think that the purple, particularly this matte purple, was a real letdown. And I think it could have been really cool in this palette, but it wasn't. Now, I know a lot of people go, okay, I love this palette, you sound so critical. This is me just giving my critical opinion of the palette. I still really like this palette. I still really like the effects that I got from it. I did struggle using it all month only because the shades are so warm and I wasn't vibing with bright colors and warm colors at the start of the month. I've sort of been coming back around to them, and that's why I sort of like these sort of looks. But yeah, I found that this was a little bit limiting because I pretty much, at the start of the month, I only wanted to use this with like those shades. Like I just wanted a basic look, and it's really hard to get. Everything here sort of leans very, very, very warm. Unless you use this one and that one, everything else is sort of like very warm. And I was like, I'm not digging it right now, but I got back into the jam of warm, which was good. And I think overall the quality is very nice. I still really like the quality. I think the way, in my opinion, this could be improved is I would make the duochromes more poppy. So I'd make them more intense like this, because that one and that one on its own were just really lackluster. I would also take out this shade here because I think it does the same thing as that one up there. I would take out this amber shade, because even though it was a nice matte, you could literally create it by mixing a red and the brown, or the orange and the brown. You can sort of create it anyway. And I would add in, I'd make this a lot better as well. This purple's a beautiful color, but the quality wasn't there. I'd want it to be a lot more intense and a lot more purple. And what I would do is I would add in like a dark plum matte. I found that this palette is very sort of light and mid-tone. There are no true dark shades, there are no true highlight shades, so I think this would benefit from a really nice shimmery highlight shade that pops, and also benefit from a really dark shade. And if it was like a very, very dark blackened plum, I think it would make all of these sort of be grounded a little bit more and give you the opportunity to make a bit of a smoky look. Whereas here you just make warm brown, warm orange looks. and you can do like a little pop of purple in there, but nothing too gutsy. I want to see something a little bit more vampy, and I want to see some light shades that are a little bit more champagne highlight shades. So that's what I'll do to sort of improve this. I'll just make them a little bit more bold in color, particularly this line, and then take away some of the redundant shades that look very similar on the lid. Add in more depth, as in like a darker shade, a lighter shade, because nothing in here could be a highlighter for me, as in like an inner corner or brow bone highlighter. None of these could be. So that's where I think this is sort of a little bit one note, even though it looks really cool. When you do analyze them, you kind of go, okay, these are like, not okay, maybe those ones there are more just my skin tone or slightly deeper, and then these are all mid-tone. I want more depth and I want more guts to the colors. So I did enjoy using this. I do still like this palette, and I probably have a better respect for it now because there are more shades that I would reach for that I possibly wouldn't have in the past. I would have used this palette to create sort of duochrome warm shades, but now I'm like, no, you can create glitter shades, you can create some beautiful neutral shades as well. But yeah, it definitely could be improved on, in my opinion. All right, so before I get onto this eye look and how I created it with the palette, I did want to tell you what I'm doing next month, or this month, because it's currently December. This video is a good week late. I like to do these videos at the end of the month and have them up right at the start of the month, or film them on the 1st or 2nd and have them up straight away so I can jump into the next month. But because of Beauty News having Vlogmas, so we're doing more content, and also we've been going to a few like creator events, I just haven't had the time to do it. So what I'm doing, I was actually going to do the Bare Minerals. This is the Aurora Lights palette. I was planning on doing this for my December 1 month 1 palette, but I'm already, as I'm talking, a week late. So what I've decided to do instead is at the end of the month or later in the month, do a recap of what I think about all the palettes I used throughout the year, and not actually do a 1 month 1 palette video in December. Now, don't be too upset. I also have been shopping a bit, and this is just an example of what I've been buying. In the Black Friday sales, the, what do you call it, Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes were 30% off, so I decided to pick up the ones that I didn't buy this year because I was on a low buy. So I've got these 3 to play with. I also picked up the Gemini palette because I'm inspired by sort of mossy, not mossy greens, but like dirty greens. I really like the warm tone greens. So I couldn't find these shades anywhere. I scoured my collection everywhere and I could not find a dupe for these sort of shades. So I thought, fuck it, I'm buying it. So I did. And then while I was there, I thought I'll buy the Smoke Sessions palette to add to my green obsession. So I also picked up this one, which also has the greens. I'm more inspired by these sort of colors there, not so much these icy greens, but these are kind of like, I love these sort of army green colors. I think they're beautiful. So I've got a lot of palettes. I've literally got 5 new palettes here, plus the palettes that I bought around Christmas to play with. So I thought December for me will just be going nuts with playing with palettes. And what I will try to do, I'm planning on sitting down and doing a get ready with me first impressions using these 2 palettes. I'm thinking of using one on one eye, one on the other eye, and getting different green looks. So I'm thinking of doing that early next week. And then what I'm thinking of doing, if you've been enjoying my sort of first impressions and then checking back throughout a week or 2 on a palette, I'm thinking of doing that for a couple of these. So in December, I will have a lot of palette content. So don't be upset, there will be a lot of palette content, but it won't be me using an old palette that I've had for ages. It will be me playing with new palettes and letting you know what I think about them. So I'm thinking of maybe doing the first impressions, trying out palettes, and then checking back in on these 2, because I don't think I can do 3 in 1 month. And then in January, I'm thinking of doing that sort of first impressions video on soft glam. So I might do something like that. I'll figure it out. I'm also going away for 1 week in January, so I might make my 1 month 1 palette video in January, maybe a travel palette, and it might just be like a 2-week video rather than a whole month video. So I need to sort of, you know, work around stuff, but I'll be back into the swing of it definitely in February, but this time I sort of want it to be experimenting and playing with cool stuff. So hopefully you don't mind, because there'll be some cool palette content on my channel. It just won't be this series, but I will wrap it up by looking at all the 11 palettes that I use this year and how I feel about them after I've used them. All right, so let's get on to this look. It is a little bit more intense than the reference photo, so I'll put the reference photo on the screen now. Because I'm back into wearing bright colors and stuff like that, I did ramp this up a little bit, but if you do want to replicate the reference photo, you can actually tone it down and just not use glitter glue and not go quite intense with it. So hopefully you enjoy. I was looking at the looks today that I created from the past month, and this was the one where I was like, oh, I actually think it was a lot prettier than I sort of gave it credit for when I did it. I thought it looked nice, but I was sort of just trying to test out colors. I wasn't actually, I don't know, I don't think I noticed how nice it looked at the time. So I'm sort of going to recreate it. I don't remember exactly how I did it because I wasn't paying much attention, and it was one of the looks right at the start of the month. But the shades that it used was mainly Eden. It used this one here, whatever that one is, Blazing, I think, and Twilight. So they're the main 3 shades I'm going to use. I might use this one to just set the base a little bit, but that's what I'm using. I don't really remember what base and everything I used, but I'm just going to go with what I would use now to recreate it. So I'm using the Bare Minerals Gen Nude. This is a cream eyeshadow and a primer in the shade Lit, and I'm just putting that all over the lid. And sorry if that might have been out of focus. It was on manual focus, and I just put on auto now. But you can see that my foundation is creased. That's fine. Just putting my primer. Now this is a pretty good primer because it does work well, but also I find that it doesn't really need to be set. I think it sets pretty well. It doesn't really, I don't know, some primers will grip your eyeshadows and make them look patchy. This one doesn't do that so much. So I'm just going to pretty much set into the crease so the mattes blend a little bit better, but it really, you can put eyeshadow straight onto this one, which is pretty good. So I'm just using that light sort of creamy shade. You can see that this is Desert Sand, the first one. It's actually not like, for me, it's not a nude shade, so I can't really use it as a highlight at all. It's more of, it definitely does define the crease, and it's more of a sort of transition shade for me. So this wasn't a very, if this was a bit lighter, I know, like, you know, it depends on your skin tone, but if this was a bit lighter, I probably would have used it all over the lid and up into the brow bone a little bit more. But because this does look quite peachy on me, I just sort of kept it as a sort of blending out or transition color. That's on. I'm going to go in with Eden, which is that peachy transition. I'm just putting this on the same brush so you can see how that does deepen it a little bit. And it's a really beautiful bright shade. I really like these peachy shades for the crease, because if you want to add a bit of color there, but you don't want to deepen it too much and make the look muddy, I find that this is a really great way. A nice peach will give you definition, but also brighten, if that makes sense. I think it's really pretty. All right, so with a flatter brush, this is actually a Huda brush, so don't judge me on my bougie life choices. I'm going in with the shade Blazing, which is that bright orange. So I am putting that sort of in the outer corner or outer half of the eye. You can see that it is quite pigmented. They do blend pretty well. I don't mind them. I think the mattes are pretty easy to use, which were quite nice. And I'm just putting that quite vividly on the outer half, and also I'm bringing it to the lower lash line. I will blend that into the crease a little bit more later, but I do want to get the purple down first. So hopefully you can see there that the orange blends really nicely. Like, I didn't even try to blend it with a blending brush yet, but it applies really easily just with a normal primer. It looks quite vibrant, doesn't look patchy, and this literally took me like 20 seconds each eye. So it's pretty simple. Now, I probably mentioned in the video, I haven't filmed it yet, but I mentioned that to make the duochromes pop a little bit more, because I find that they are nice colors, but they really need some help to pop, and whether that is like a darker base or even a complementary base. So for example, I'm using the sort of purpley shade to pop against the orange, But I also feel like a glitter glue, which my favorite one is the Too Faced glitter glue. Something like this really helps grip the shadow and make it pop. Well, I'm just tapping it on the inner half of this. So it's lifted a tiny bit of the primer, but it generally keeps the eyeshadow pretty well intact if you just sort of tap it on. But I'm going in with Twilight, and I'm going to go in with the same brush but on the other side. You probably can't see it because it doesn't pick up. There you go, if you can see it in the there. I'm going to put it on and then I might tap some on with my finger to intensify it even more. So, well, probably don't need to with the glitter glue, which is great. So glitter glue is a marvel when it comes to these sort of shades. And this probably looks a lot more intense than the look that I created because I doubt that I used glitter glue for that one. It was more later in the month where I was playing with these and thought, yep, they definitely need glitter glue. But I'm glad I used it in this because it looks beautiful. And I haven't used glitter glue on my lower lash line, but generally I find that if there's a little bit on the brush from applying it on the top, sort of transfers it a little bit and helps it stick. So that's what is happening here. All right, I'm just going in with a bit more of that orange just to help transition that a little bit. So it's not like a bold line between the two. You can have a bold line if you want, but I sort of like the transition, so I'm just patting a little bit of the orange over the top. Then I'm just going back with that original fluffy brush. I've got a little bit of the orange that I'm just going to blend into the crease a little bit just to help diffuse that. Then the eyeliner I used on the, like as a wing and also in the waterline was one by Inglot, so it's this orangey colored one, and it's in the color 63. I'm using this brush, which I got from an art shop, so it's not a fancy brand. It's an arts and craft one or a painting one. So with the wing, people sometimes ask, I sort of follow the lower lash line and I follow that sort of angle that it creates. And then I just pull it back. And then with less product in the brush, I just sort of sharpen that a little bit. These Inglot liners also are super pigmented. They're the best colored liners I've ever come across, but they also stay on the waterline really well, so feel free to use it there. All right, so I had to make my wings fatter because I sort of bunged this one up. So I had to make this one fatter. I hope they're uneven, but hopefully mascara hides some of my shame. So we're going in with mascara. This is just my Climax by NARS. And let's just do this. All right, so that is pretty much the look. It's the same vibe anyway. It's a little bit more intense than the one that I had in the photo, but I'm sort of digging brighter colors at the moment to the point where I think I might add some neon liner just for the fun of it. But that photo also had lashes. I'm not gonna put lashes on because I don't actually think they needs it for this look. I think it looks kind of cool as it is. It's much better in person than it looks on camera as far as I can see anyway. So I hope it looks better when I'm back a bit in the video, but I might put on some purple liner maybe. Okay, because I have been quite obsessed with colorful looks and colorful liner, I might try some of this neon purple liner from JD Glow Cosmetics. I don't know if you can focus on this. Thank you. So that's the neon purple, I think it is. Yeah, neon purple. And what I'm going to do to minimize some of this chunky liner business is I'm just going to line the liner slightly. All right, so you can barely see that. It didn't really do much. It just sort of lined it a little bit. It's sort of hard to compete with all the colors. So, oh well, but that's a look that I sort of have recreated. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed that. If you want to see past episodes, I do have some on the screen, and give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.